It's the Italian automotive company, best known for making little Fiats a little faster. But they've also been involved with everything from open wheel racing to rallying. Welcome to Abarth. Carlo Abarth began working in automobiles in 1947, and he got his start with Ferry Porsche, his good friend, who was developing a new Grand Prix car called the Porsche 360, and Carlos was assigned to work on the project with him. This absolutely radical design in 1948 was a supercharged flat 12 open-wheel Grand Prix car that made 385 horsepower with a fully functional, variable, all-wheel drive system. A variable all-wheel drive system in 1948. That's standard equipment on most SUVs these days, but in 1948 that was witchcraft. But the project never really went anywhere, and it was never raced. It was just a concept. So he went back to work at his company that he was working at, called Sistalia? I don't know. It was an Italian motor racing company that, let's just say, did not have a sound financial footing. Who could have guessed? And it went bankrupt just 2 years later in 1949. However, Abarth was able to take over the remains of said bankrupt company and formed his own company called Abarth, because it's his last name, Abarth. And Abarth immediately began working on the Abarth 204A, essentially a rebadged version of Sistalia's last production car. And it was fairly successful because Abarth was a racing guy, and he wanted to go motor racing, so he went motor racing with it. And he successfully won the 500 kilometers of Nürburgring and his class at the Palermo Monte Carlo Pellegrino hill climb. In fact, Abarth's factory driver, Johann Abt, won 29 out of the 30 races he competed in. So, Abarth had a pretty solid footing, which meant they got some attention from the big boy in town, Fiat. And Fiat bought them out in 1971. Now, this isn't the first time Fiat and Abarth had worked together. In 1952, just 3 years after the company was founded, they worked together to make the 1500 Biposto prototype, which was a funky-looking car that never made it past the concept stage. But they also worked on tuning the Fiat 500, and Abarth was along the way tuning it in 1966 with the 695 SS Abarth. This little economy car had wider wheel arches for better stability, and the engine was upped from 28 horsepower to 37. Ooh, which could propel it to a blistering top speed of 87 miles an hour. But what did Abarth do at Fiat once they were bought out? Well, Fiat turned them from just a simple modification shop into the rally team. And they immediately began working on the 124 Spider, one of the best cars in Europe at the time. Already had a pretty decent 118 horsepower inline 4. In a two-door sports car, that's pretty darn good, but the rally version had to be better. And it was better. Not only did it get 126 horsepower, it also got independent rear suspension, fiberglass body panels, brake discs on all four corners, and a better double wishbone suspension system. and despite the heavy roll cage, it weighed 55 pounds less than the already lightweight 124, and it was pretty successful in rally. It won a lot of rallies from 1971 to 1973, but then the Lancia Stratos showed up, and Fiat needed a response, because while they may be partners, they weren't friends, and they wanted to win. So, Abarth took the innocent little Fiat 131 economy car and turned it into a fire-breathing monster. Only 400 of these were built for Group 4 homologation purposes. It featured a 16-valve inline-4, making 138 horsepower, and it also continued the 124 trend of having independent rear suspension and plastic lightweight bodywork. And the rally car got all that and even more. Not only did it get the quintessential mud flaps and rally lights and etc., it also got 250 horsepower out of that little i4. And to say it was successful was an understatement. By the time it was debuted in 1977, it won the championship 3 times in 1977, 1978, and 1980, with 20 WRC rallies under their belts, and 2 driver championships for Marco Allen in 1978 and Walter Roll in 1980. It was a seriously good vehicle, but the best was yet to come. Enter the Lancia Beta Monte Carlo, because Fiat partnered up Abarth and Lancia to make the ultimate performance car. This mid-engined V6 was a true race-bred vehicle. Not only was it a sports car on the road, it was a supercar on the track. It was entered in the 1980 Sports Car World Championship, and it won that. Then it was entered in the 1981 Sports Car World Championship, and guess what? It won that as well. And then, of course, we all know the story. I did a whole video on it. The single greatest rally car of all time. The Lancia 037 was a Monte Carlo in every way, but every way. And Abarth was there for the whole thing. Tuning it, developing it jointly with Lancia, instead of opposing each other like they did in the early 70s. Unfortunately, that was the highlights for Abarth, and by the mid-1980s and 1990s, they were just a badge, really. The company had more or less dissolved, and it was just a moniker for a performance symbol. It wasn't really, it was kind of like SS. It wasn't really its own division. Until 2007, when it was re-established by Fiat Chrysler as Abarth & Co. Spa. I think that's how it's said. And they immediately started work on the Fiat Grande Punto, which was a very good little hatchback, producing 180 horsepower. So, it was pretty good handling and pretty nippy in the acceleration, and it looked absolutely mental for an Italian hatchback. But in 2010, they would release the vehicle that marks them most iconic. When the 500 came back, and Abarth was right there with it. This car no longer made 37 horsepower, no. The turbocharged i4 was bumped up to 158 horsepower, 180 foot-pounds of torque. And despite being front-wheel drive, it could do 0 to 60 in a respectable 7.7 seconds. And it weighed less than 2,000 pounds, so not only could it accelerate like mad, it was pretty good through the corners. I think we would have to agree on that statement. And once again, it gets the signature bonkers Italian paint job. Because every Abarth needs a bonkers Italian paint job. And speaking of bonkers Italian paint jobs, they don't get more iconic, more retro, and more epic than the Fiat 124 Abarth, reintroduced in 2016, again as a homage to their earlier models. This is jointly developed between Mazda and Fiat, so it shares most of its components with an MX-5, but they threw a turbocharger on that car, making 170 horsepower and 180 foot-pounds of torque in a rear-wheel drive two-door sports car with a black hood. That does not get more epic than that, really. And just like the 60s version they worked on earlier, there is a rally car designed for FIA RGT, and it is an absolute monster. No longer making 126 horsepower, no, it makes 300. Going to the rear wheels, I can imagine that's quite a handful on rally stages. But if you want the tippy top of the Abarth lineup, you gotta go to the Fiat 500 again. Only this time it's called the 695. Yeah, they brought the name back from the 60s, only instead of having 37 horsepower, it's got 180 and 190 foot-pounds of torque. But that's not even the most impressive thing, because this is a proper track toy, okay? It's got lightweight carbon fiber components, a new exhaust system, a limited slip differential, adjustable suspension, an adjustable rear wing to generate actual usable downforce. It is a proper sports track toy, and by far the fastest around a circuit from Fiat. Sure, they may only sell 3 models, and sure, they may cost more than a comparable performance car in their class, but they are absolute legends in the automotive industry that are often undercut because they're just a subsidiary of Fiat. But if you look at the history and you look at the success they have made, not just in the past, but in their current lineup, it is a bit sad on how they're often overlooked.